It's 6 p.m. on a Friday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che, here to provide you with the latest. Let's begin with the headlines. The people have spoken. Britain is no longer a part of the European Union. The immediate impact, Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron, says he will resign, and the pound plunges to its lowest level since 1985. South Korea holds an emergency meeting with financial authorities to formulate swift and firm countermeasures for the possible fallout from the Brexit decision. The UN Security Council adopts a press statement condemning North Korea, once again demanding the regime halt all nuke tests and missile activities. In a historic vote, Brits have opted to leave the European Union. The vote has already resulted in some dramatic news from Prime Minister David Cameron, who says he will step down. Kim Hye-sung starts us off with the result of the EU referendum.
Britain has voted to leave the European Union. The official results of Thursday's historic referendum showed leave with 52% to 48% for remain, with all 382 districts reporting. England voted overwhelmingly for Brexit, while London, Scotland, and Northern Ireland backed remain. Soon after the Brexit vote, David Cameron, who called the referendum and led the campaign to remain in the EU, said he would resign as Prime Minister.
I think the country requires fresh leadership. I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination. But in my view, we should aim to have a new Prime Minister in place by the start of the Conservative Party conference in October.
With his announcement, more instability and mudslinging among the UK's political leaders is expected. Uncertainty about Britain's future relationship with the EU, its largest trading partner, could also push the UK into a recession, with the IMF declaring that it would knock 5.5% off the UK's GDP. On top of that, leaving the EU could cost Britain access to the EU's trade barrier-free single market. The EU, for its part, is also expected to suffer economic and political damage. But the Brexit vote doesn't mean the UK can leave the EU right away. Britain will have to negotiate a new treaty to replace the terms of EU membership and hash out issues like trade tariffs, migration, and the regulation of everything from cars to agriculture. This process could take anywhere between 5 to 7 years, and during that time, more political debates and lengthy renegotiations of trade and diplomatic deals with the EU and other countries are expected. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Now, we've seen a roller coaster reaction from world markets, and Korea is no exception. We go live to our Hwang Ji-hye at Korea Exchange for more on the market reaction. Ji-hye, the end of that 43-year membership is putting strains on local shares today. Tell us more.
Yes, Daniel, it sure was a frightening day for many investors. The benchmark Kospi opened above the 2,000 level on the back of hopes that Britons will decide to remain in the 28-nation regional bloc. But the final result sent the index plunging to 1,925, closing down around 3%. The same goes for the country's tech-heavy Kosdaq. The index erased all of its earlier gains and shed a whopping 4.7% today. After poll results started to put the Leave campaign in a stronger lead, its shares plunged, triggering a sidecar. We've seen two sidecars kick in so far this year, including today's. The system acts like a circuit breaker that suspends transactions for 5 minutes when shares rise or drop by 3% or futures by 6% or more for over a minute. The tech-heavy index saw both a slide beyond the 6% mark, triggering the temporary halt. The Korean won, of course, also weakened significantly against the greenback and traded at 1,179 won, weakening by nearly 30 won from the previous close.
Let's shift our focus to markets outside of Korea. Tell us more about the drastic dipping digits there.
Well, Daniel, not surprising at all. Asia saw some massive plunges today. The Nikkei closed down nearly 8%, and its futures at one point shed over 8%, putting a circuit breaker in motion. Chinese stocks plunged as well, with the Shanghai Composite down around 1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng also closed down almost 3%. This all comes as investors are now looking for safer assets with the Brexit actually taking place. And as you said, markets haven't been pricing in that uncertainty, so the trend has been further amplified throughout world markets. The British sterling once plunged to a more than 30-year low against U.S. dollar, as you heard earlier, down nearly 10%. The Japanese yen, which is traditionally considered a safe haven, surged to its strongest level since 2013, once trading below 100 yen against the greenback. Now, this prompted Bank of Japan Governor Haruhiko Kuroda to say he's open to provide sufficient liquidity, including strap lines, among 6 central banks. Now, gold, another safe asset, also rallied, jumping around 8%, hitting $1,355 an ounce around noon, the highest price since 2014 in Asian trade. This was Hwang Jie from Korea Exchange.
All right, thank you for those updates, Jie. Amid uncertainty and plunging figures, the Korean government vowed to do all it can to stabilize the market. Vice Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok made the announcement on Friday during an emergency meeting with other financial authorities to discuss the possible fallout from the UK's exit from the European Union. Choi said authorities will closely monitor the currency market and foreign capital outflow to reduce volatility in the local market. The vice minister added that the government will strengthen its policy coordination efforts with related ministries to prevent the impact spreading to the real economy. Meanwhile, Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho, who is in China to attend the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank meeting, issued a statement saying that the government will swiftly and firmly take steps to deal with the market volatility if necessary. Switching over to the latest in global response to North Korean provocations, the UN Security Council has spoken with one voice to condemn Pyongyang's latest ballistic missile launches. It's also pressing member states to implement the sanctions on the rogue regime. Kwon So-hwa gives us the updates.
A day after the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting on North Korea's 2 missile tests, it adopted a press statement condemning Pyongyang's continuous violations of its obligations to the international community. The statement, the 7th of its kind this year, and issued by Council President François Delattre, said Wednesday's test firings were a grave violation of a ban on all ballistic missile activity in the country. The Council reiterated its demand that North Korea end its flagrant violations and halt all nuclear tests and ballistic missile activity, adding that the launches improve North Korea's nuclear delivery systems and increase tension in the region. It also urged Pyongyang to comply with 5 UN resolutions imposed since the country's first nuclear test in 2006. Seoul's foreign ministry has welcomed the adoption of the statement and said it will continue with its diplomatic efforts in regards to the implementation of UN sanctions. The Unification Ministry urged Pyongyang to immediately stop its provocative acts.
We're warning North Korea that it will face even stronger sanctions if it ignores South Korea and the international community's warnings and goes forward with similar provocations.
The UN Security Council called on all UN member states to redouble their efforts to fully implement the sanctions against North Korea. It also urged members to quickly hand in their sanctions implementation plans, as many have not done so within the requested 90 days upon the adoption of Resolution 2270 in March. In related news, Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se has asked members of the nuclear supplier group, which wrapped up its 26th meeting in Seoul on Friday, for further efforts to cut off North Korea's access to nuclear material. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
The top North Korea expert warns the communist state's intercontinental ballistic missiles may reach operational status by the early 2020s. Writing for the U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North, John Schilling said that despite the shortcomings of Pyongyang's Musudan missile launches, it was able to display the full performance of the missile's propulsion system and a minimally functional guidance system. Though Schilling did express doubt the Musudan will ever become a reliable weapon, he adds its trials and errors will contribute to the development of the regime's KN-08 and KN-14 road mobile systems. On the eve of June 25th, the day North Korean forces invaded the South, triggering the Korean War 66 years ago, President Park Geun-hye attended a ceremony honoring war veterans from both home and abroad. At the event, she reiterated Seoul's will to press Pyongyang away from its nuclear ambitions and her vision for unification.
북한의 비핵화에 대한 우리와 국제사회의 의지는 결코 흔들리지 않을 것입니다. 정부는 참전 용사들께서 피와 땀으로 지켜낸 대한민국이 북한의 위협에서 벗어나 한반도의 평화를 정착시키고 나아가 평화 통일 시대를 열어갈 수 있도록 노력할 것입니다.
Vowing a strong alliance with the United States and other nations that supported the South Korean army during the war, the president stressed that peace and unification can only be achieved on the grounds of firm defense and said Seoul and Pyongyang can together build peace and prosperity as a unified Korea. Korea has invited some 70 foreign Korean War veterans back to the country they fought so bravely for. It's just one of the many events commemorating the outbreak of the war that changed Korea forever. Lee-ji-won tells us about the program and one very special participant.
He was armed with sheet music instead of a gun, and during the Korean War, American pianist Seymour Bernstein used his talent to give classical music concerts, offering his comrades some moments of solace and hope. Now Bernstein is back in Korea and preparing for a special performance on Monday, nearly 40 years after his retirement. He's here at the invitation of the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, along with 70 other war veterans and their families. Together, the group will participate in a Veterans Appreciation Program, coinciding with the day when the Korean War broke out 66 years ago on June 25th, when the North invaded the South. At a press conference on Friday, Bernstein referred to Korea as his second home and expressed his excitement about the upcoming event.
I'm looking forward to it, and you can understand that with all of the veterans here, this is a very dramatic experience for all of us. The fact that we were allowed to help Korea to experience freedom and to help them endure all the hardships that resulted from the war, that was a great privilege to us to be able to do that. So it wasn't only that we sacrificed ourselves, but we got back in return a great sense of joy for having been able to do that.
Over the next 3 days, the veterans will attend the ceremony for the 66th anniversary of the start of the Korean War, pay a visit to Seoul National Cemetery, and tour key attractions in Seoul. It's all designed to offer them a fresh perspective on the country for which they fought, repay them for their sacrifices, and honor their service. Lee-ji-won, Arirang News.
Busan Coast Guard officials have arrived in the Seychelles for an on-site investigation into the murder of 2 Koreans by 2 Vietnamese sailors. The officials boarded the boat without incident this morning, Korea time, after it docked in the capital of Victoria. They've taken into custody 2 Vietnamese sailors accused of murdering the ship's captain and chief engineer aboard the vessel on Monday while intoxicated. The 2 suspects will be flown to Korea from Seychelles as early as Saturday for further questioning. The 138-ton vessel was near the Seychelles in the Indian Ocean at the time of the murder. In some tech news now, the market for ultra-high-definition TV panels has reached a milestone. According to IHS Technology on Friday, the market share for Ultra HD has surpassed that of HD by more than 10% in the second quarter from the quarter before. The market share for regular HD panels, which have the lowest image quality and resolution of the 3, has remained roughly the same at around 14%. Sales of UHD TVs have risen steadily despite a shrinking global TV market because of a growing demand from developed countries and emerging countries like China. IHS forecasts the market share for UHD TV will be more than half of the global TV market share by the third quarter. A powerful tornado and hailstorms have killed scores of people and injured hundreds in China's Jiangsu province. According to our Park Jung-hong, hail the size of table tennis balls wreaked havoc in the region.
The intense weather in Jiangsu province caused a high number of casualties, leaving nearly 80 people dead and some 500 injured. The hail came down so hard that it left gaping holes in the ground. A tornado, said to be the most powerful in 40 years, also ripped through the province in eastern China. After Mother Nature was done, much of the region looked like a conflict zone, as factories and buildings were flattened, roofs of homes were ripped off, and cars were overturned. The tornado and hailstorms raged on for more than 4 hours. China's official Xinhua news agency said winds of 125 kilometers an hour battered several towns in Funing County. Communication and power have been cut off. Leading up to the latest havoc in the country's central to southern region, torrential rains that started last week had already claimed some 30 lives and left more than 20 missing. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
These are the stories we're following at this hour. More updates for you at 10 p.m. Korea time, so do join us then. For now, thank you for watching.